I smiled and told my son exactly what he wanted to hear. But 10 minutes later, I signed a document that would ruin his plan. On Christmas Eve, the house he thought he was stealing became the trap that silenced our family. They believed I was a fragile widow, but they did not know I held the real key. The only person who knew my secret was the one man I had sworn never to see again. My name is Marla Whitaker. I am 56 years old, and for the last 3 decades, I was the woman who knew where every skeleton was buried in this town, or at least which filing cabinet it was stuffed into at the Crestview Municipal Archives. I retired 6 months ago, not because I wanted to, but because my lower back finally staged a protest against the metal chairs and the sheer weight of public records. Now, my life is quiet. I live in a small wooden house on the edge of Maple Hollow, a structure my late husband and I bought when we were young and foolishly optimistic. It is not a mansion, but it is mine. It is the only thing standing between me and the invisibility that seems to swallow widows in this country. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the morning light filtering through the lace curtains, meticulously recording my expenses in a leather-bound ledger: $3.50 for coffee grounds, $42 for the electric bill. Every penny had to be accounted for. The silence was comfortable until the phone rang, shattering the peace. It was Drew. My son is 32 years old, handsome in a way that makes people trust him too quickly, and currently engaged to Tessa, a woman of 29 who has a smile that never quite reaches her eyes. "Mom, listen, we have amazing news," Drew said, his voice too loud, too cheerful. "Tessa and I have been talking. We want to save for a down payment on a really big place for our future family. And we thought, well, why are we paying rent when you have that big house all to yourself?" I stopped writing. The pen hovered over the paper. "What are you saying?" "Drew, we are moving in." "Mom," he said, not asking, but announcing, just temporarily, after Christmas. "It makes sense. You are getting older, and that house is too much work for one person. It is lonely out there. Families help families, right?" His words were wrapped in concern, but I felt a chill slide down my spine. It was the tone he used when he wanted money for a car repair or a vacation he could not afford. It was a mixture of begging and commanding. I am perfectly capable of living alone. "Drew," I said, my voice steady. "Don't be difficult," he snapped, the sweetness evaporating instantly. "We are doing this for us, for the family. Besides, I already told my guy to start looking at the paperwork to make sure everything is, smooth." I gripped the phone tighter. "Paperwork. What paperwork do you need to move a few boxes into a guest room?" There was a pause, a heavy silence that screamed of secrets. Just logistics. "Mom, address changes. Don't worry about it. I have it handled." He hung up before I could press him. But the seed of suspicion had been planted. 2 days later, Tessa came over for a pre-move visit. She did not bring cookies or flowers. She brought a tape measure and a notepad. She walked through my living room, tapping the walls with a manicured fingernail. She did not look at the photos of Drew as a baby or the quilt my mother made. She looked at the floorboards and the window frames. "The foundation seems solid," Tessa muttered, writing something down. She turned to me, her eyes scanning me like I was a piece of furniture she planned to discard. "Marla, is the mortgage fully paid off?" Drew said it was, but I like to be sure. "It is," I said, standing by the kitchen counter, crossing my arms. "And the insurance policy?" she continued, not missing a beat. Who is the primary beneficiary right now? Is it still just you? Why does that matter? Tessa. She laughed, a hollow, tinkling sound. Oh, just planning. We want to make sure everything is protected. You know, in case something happens, we just want to take care of you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the truth. She did not see a home, she saw an asset. She saw equity that she could strip mine to fund a lifestyle she had not earned. And my son was holding the shovel for her. That night, the house felt different. It felt threatened. I went to the heavy oak cabinet in the hallway and pulled out the file my husband had left me. It contained the deed, the original loan documents, and his handwritten notes. I ran my fingers over his handwriting. Drew thought I was just a lonely old woman who would be grateful for the company. He thought he could guilt me into surrendering the keys to my kingdom. I sat in the dark living room, the ledger open in front of me. I picked up my pen. I would let them come. I would let them think they had won. I would nod and smile and bake cookies for Christmas. Want to move in? I whispered to the empty room, my voice trembling with a rage I had not felt in years. Fine. But once you step in, you won't walk out with what you think. The next morning, I drove to the Crestview Municipal Archives. The building smelled of dust, stale coffee, and the slow decay of paper. A scent that had been my perfume for 25 years. I did not go to the front desk. I walked straight to the back office where Miriam sat behind a stack of zoning permits. Miriam was 60, sharp as a tack, and the only person I trusted to keep her mouth shut. Marla, she said, lowering her reading glasses. You look like you are on a mission, or you ran out of coffee. I need a favor. Miriam, I said, pulling up a chair. I need you to pull the property records for my house, the official deed history, and any recent activity logs. Don't ask me why yet. Miriam studied my face for a second, then turned to her computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. You know, we have been seeing a lot of this lately. Kids dragging their parents in here, talking about asset protection or estate planning. Usually, it just means they want to make sure the house is in their name before the nursing home bills start coming. Her words stung because they were too close to the truth. Here we are, Miriam said, squinting at the screen. Then she frowned. That is odd. What is it? I asked, leaning in. There was an inquiry filed 2 weeks ago, she said, pointing at the monitor. An urgent, abstract request. That usually happens when someone is preparing for a sale or a transfer of title. The requesting party is an entity called North Pine Family Solutions. I felt the blood drain from my face. I never contacted a company called North Pine. Well, someone did, Miriam said. She clicked on the details. The contact person listed on the request form is, let me see here, a representative named Clayton Reed. And the contact phone number for the property owner is listed here too. She read the number out loud. My stomach dropped. It was not my number. It was the number for a prepaid cell phone Drew had bought 3 months ago. He had told me he needed it for work projects to keep his personal line clear. I sat back, the room spinning slightly. I did not say a word. But the noise in my head was deafening. My own son had initiated a title search on my home 2 weeks before he even asked if he could move in. He had lied. He was not asking for help. He was executing a strategy. I remembered the times he would roll his eyes when I balanced my checkbook. Mom, "You are so old-fashioned," he would say. "You don't understand modern finance. Just sign here. It saves you the headache." I had signed things, insurance updates, medical proxy forms, small things, or so I thought. Marla Miriam touched my arm. "You are pale." "I am fine." I lied. "Who is Clayton Reed?" Miriam typed the name into a different internal database, one we used for flagging problematic contractors. "He is not a contractor. He is a financial consultant. We had a few complaints about him last year, nothing criminal that stuck, but rumors. He targets seniors with high equity and convinces them to leverage their assets for family investment opportunities. Essentially, he helps kids strip the value out of their parents' estates while the parents are still alive. Rage is a funny thing. It can make you scream, or it can make you very, very quiet. I became quiet. "Do not print anything," I said softly. "If they see a print record, they will know I was looking." "I am not printing it," Miriam said. She scribbled a name and number on a sticky note. "But you need to talk to Evan Blackwell. He is an attorney I know. He specializes in elder law and fraud. He eats guys like Clayton Reed for breakfast." I took the note. An hour later, I was sitting in a small, cluttered office across town. Evan Blackwell was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes and a suit that needed pressing. He listened to me without interrupting. "If they have already run the abstract, they are preparing a deed transfer or a lien," Evan said, his voice low and serious. "If you sign the wrong power of attorney, they won't even need you present to sell the house. My advice: we file a blocking notice immediately. We lock the title down today." I looked at the sticky note in my hand. I thought about Drew's smile. I thought about Tessa measuring my living room. If I stopped them now, they would just deny it. They would say it was a misunderstanding. They would gaslight me until I believed I was the crazy one. "No," I said. Evan looked surprised. "Mrs. Whitaker, this is dangerous. If you sign, I won't sign anything." I cut him off. "But I don't want to scare them off yet. If I block it now, they run away and try again later. I want to catch them. What are you planning?" Evan asked. "They think I am a confused old woman who needs them," I said, standing up and buttoning my coat. "So I am going to be exactly that. I will let them think the door is open. I want to see how far they will walk into the trap." I looked Evan in the eye. "I want to set the table myself." "Mr. Blackwell, the lawyer only appears when I give the signal." That evening, Drew and Tessa arrived for dinner to celebrate what they called our new chapter. They did not bring wine or a dessert. Instead, Tessa placed a laminated sheet of paper on my dining table right next to the roast chicken I had spent 3 hours preparing. It was a list titled Shared Living Protocols. I looked at the paper. It listed quiet hours, refrigerator shelf assignments, and a rule that strictly prohibited unannounced guests after 8 in the evening. It read like a lease agreement for a college dorm, not a plan for a son moving back in with his mother. "We just want to make sure we are all on the same page. Marla," Tessa said, stabbing a piece of carrot with her fork. "Boundaries are healthy. We don't want to step on each other's toes." She did not wait for my response. She looked around the kitchen, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the cabinets. "Also, we need to talk about this kitchen," she continued, her voice light and breezy. "The oak is very 1990s. We are going to paint it white. And the locks on the front door need to be changed to smart locks. I already ordered them. They arrive on Tuesday." She did not ask. She informed, "You are changing the locks on my house." I asked, keeping my voice mild. Drew chimed in, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "It is for safety. Mom, you are here all alone. Honestly, it is a miracle nothing has happened to you yet. You are not exactly young anymore." He reached across the table and patted my hand. His palm felt clammy. "We just want to take care of you," Drew said, his tone dropping to that serious, concerned register he used when he wanted something. "Because if this arrangement doesn't work, well, we have to look at the alternatives. And you know the facilities around here are not great. You wouldn't like assisted living. It smells like bleach and despair." The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He was telling me that if I did not let them take over my house, he would put me away. I felt a knot of pure anguish in my chest, but I forced my face to remain blank. They were not just moving in. They were planning a hostile takeover of my life. "I suppose you are right," I said softly, looking down at my plate. "I do forget things sometimes." Tessa smiled at Drew. It was a conspiratorial smirk. "Speaking of which," Tessa said, taking a sip of water, "I have the appraiser coming the week after Christmas. I spoke to a broker today, just a preliminary chat, but she said the market is peaking. If we decide to liquidate later, we need to know the baseline value." My fork clattered onto my plate. "Liquidate?" I asked. "Who gave you the right to talk to a broker?" Tessa laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, relax, Marla. We are just exploring options. We are going to be family. Right. Your assets are our future. It is all the same pot." Drew cleared his throat and reached into his leather satchel. He pulled out a thick document, stapled at the corner. "While we are on the subject of safety," Drew said, sliding the papers toward me, "I need you to sign these. It is just standard stuff. Medical updates, emergency contacts, a basic power of attorney so I can pick up your prescriptions or talk to your insurance if you get sick. It is just to make things easier." I looked at the document. It was thick, dense with legal jargon. And there, at the bottom of the first page, was a small, familiar logo, a stylized pine tree. North Pine Family Solutions. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This was the trap Evan Blackwell had warned me about. I reached for my reading glasses, my hand deliberately trembling. I squinted at the pages, flipping them clumsily. "Oh, Drew?" I said, making my voice sound thin and weary. "The print is so small, and my eyes are just terrible tonight. I don't think I can read this right now. My head is spinning a bit." I looked up at him, widening my eyes in feigned confusion. "Can I take it upstairs?" I asked. "I will read it in bed when I have my good lamp. I will sign it in the morning." Drew exchanged a quick look with Tessa. He looked relieved that I hadn't refused. "Sure, Mom," he said, pushing the papers closer to me. "Take your time. Just make sure it is done by tomorrow. We want to get it filed before the holiday break." Later that night, I locked my bedroom door. I sat at my desk and turned on the bright lamp. I did not need to rest my eyes. I needed to see exactly how my son planned to betray me. I read every line, buried on page 12 in a paragraph about medical necessity. I found the clause. It stated that full control of all real estate and financial assets would transfer to the agent Drew immediately upon a determination of diminished mental capacity. And the kicker was in the next sentence. The determination did not require a court order or a panel of independent doctors. It only required the signature of a single attending physician, specifically a doctor from a list of approved providers affiliated with North Pine Family Solutions. They were not waiting for me to get sick. They were going to declare me incompetent. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. I closed the folder and whispered into the empty room. "You want to play the game of who is crazy?" I asked the silence. "Fine. Let's see who loses their mind first." I met Evan Blackwell at a small, greasy diner 10 miles outside of town, a place where the coffee tasted like burnt rubber and nobody asked questions. I slid the heavy envelope across the table, my hands trembling just a little. Evan opened it, his eyes scanning the dense paragraphs of the document Drew had given me. "This is not a safety measure." "Marla," Evan said, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "This is a legalized takeover. If you sign this, you are effectively handing them your checkbook, your deed, and your autonomy." "I suspected as much," I whispered. "But how do we stop it without them knowing I know Evan pulled out a yellow legal pad? We create a shield they cannot see until they crash into it. We are going to place your home into a revocable living trust. You will be the primary beneficiary, but I will appoint an independent trustee to oversee any major transactions. It means that even if they force you to sign a power of attorney, that document will be useless because you, as an individual, will no longer hold the title to the house. The trust will—" He typed something into his laptop, his brow furrowing. The tapping of the keys was the only sound at our table for a long minute. Then he stopped. "Marla," he said, looking up at me over the rim of his glasses. "Did you take out a loan recently, maybe for repairs?" "No," I said firmly. "I have not borrowed a dime since 1998. Evan turned the laptop screen toward me. "There is a preliminary lien filed against your property. It was lodged 3 days ago. It is a mechanic's lien for emergency structural consulting services provided by a subsidiary of North Pine Family Solutions. They are claiming you owe them $50,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. $50,000, I never hired them. I never signed a contract. "This is paperwork fraud," Evan said, his jaw tightening. "They are creating a debt that does not exist so they can force a sale to cover it. They are manufacturing a crisis. But we can use this. If we can prove they filed this without your consent, we have them on fraud. I want them to admit it," I said, gripping the edge of the table. "I don't want a settlement. I want them to say it out loud." Evan nodded slowly. "Then we set a trap. Christmas Eve. You tell them you are ready to sign the power of attorney. Let them believe they have won. But we will install a camera in your living room. In this state. As long as you are a party to the conversation, you can record it. We will get them to explain the lien, the debt, and the plan on tape. I don't want them to go to prison just because I am angry," I said, looking out the window at the grey sky. "I want them to collapse because of their own greed. I want to see the look on my son's face when he realizes he sold his mother for nothing. We will give them the rope." Evan agreed. "By the way, I looked into this Clayton Reed. He has a history. He was investigated 5 years ago for convincing seniors to liquidate their assets into family annuities that turned out to be shell companies. He is slippery. He won't slip past me," I said. "I can hire a private investigator to watch the house," Evan offered. "Just to be safe." "No need," I said, picking up my purse. "I already have someone watching them." Evan looked at me with a question in his eyes, but I did not elaborate. I could not tell him that my source was a ghost from a past I had buried deep. I drove home the long way, my mind racing. As I passed the commercial district, I saw a familiar car parked in front of the North Pine office building. It was Drew's sedan. It was nearly 11 at night. I pulled my car into the shadows of the adjacent lot and killed the engine. The door to the office opened. Drew stepped out, looking nervous, checking his watch. A moment later, another man stepped out to join him. He was tall, wearing an expensive coat, and he had striking silver hair that shone under the street lamps. He clapped a hand on Drew's shoulder, shaking it firmly, the gesture of a mentor congratulating a student. It was the handshake of accomplices. I raised my phone and snapped 3 photos, the shutter sound silent, but my heart beating like a war drum against my ribs. "I see you," I whispered to the glass. "And soon, everyone else will too." I spent the next 2 days decorating the house with a fervour that bordered on mania. I hung the evergreen wreaths with their red velvet ribbons in every window and wound the string lights tightly around the banister. The house smelled of cinnamon sticks and baked apples, the same scent I had filled these rooms with for 30 years. To anyone looking in from the street, it looked like a festive, welcoming home. But to me, it felt like I was dressing a stage for a trial. Every ornament was a piece of evidence. Every flickering candle was a timer counting down to the explosion. I checked Facebook while drinking my morning coffee and saw a notification from Drew. He had posted a photo of my living room, my fireplace, my rug, my favourite armchair with the caption, "New beginnings in our forever home." So blessed. He did not mention me. He did not mention that the home belonged to his mother, Mrs. Gable, my neighbour of 20 years. Commented underneath. Such a good son to take care of his mother in her golden years. I read the comment and laughed. A dry, sharp sound that frightened the cat. "Yes," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "He is a saint." At noon, the mail carrier dropped a stack of envelopes through the slot. I shuffled through the bills until I found a thick, cream-coloured envelope. It was addressed to Ms. Marla Whitaker. I opened it to find a professionally printed invitation to a Christmas Eve housewarming party. The location was my address. The hosts were listed as the family of Drew and Tessa. I was being invited to a party in my own house by a woman who had not paid a single electric bill. The humiliation was a physical weight in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I needed them confident. I needed them arrogant. "Marla, we need to talk about the sleeping arrangements," Tessa said later that afternoon, standing in the doorway of the master bedroom with her arms crossed. "Drew and I have been discussing it, and we really need the master suite. It just makes sense for the couple starting their life to have the space. The basement room is cozy. It is quieter down there. You will like the privacy." I looked at Drew, who was standing behind her, staring intently at his phone to avoid meeting my eyes. "Drew," I asked, keeping my voice soft, "you want me to sleep in the basement next to the furnace? My arthritis acts up in the damp." "It is just practical." "Mum," Drew mumbled, finally looking up. "The basement is finished. It has a carpet. You don't need all this space upstairs. We have a lot of stuff coming." I looked at my son. I remembered working 2 jobs when he was 10 years old so that I could pay the electric bill and he could still have new sneakers for school. I remembered sitting up with him when he had the flu, holding a cool cloth to his forehead for hours. Now, he looked at me like I was an old piece of furniture that clashed with the new aesthetic. "All right," I said, lowering my head to hide the fire in my eyes. I will move my things. I spent the rest of the day packing boxes, but the boxes I carried out to the trunk of my car did not go to the basement. I drove them straight to the bank. My marriage license, the original deed to the house, my grandmother's jewelry, and the spare keys. Everything that mattered went into a safety deposit box registered to the newly formed Whitaker Home Trust. When I returned, I began the final phase of my plan. I made a series of phone calls, keeping my voice cheerful and light. "Miriam, please come by tomorrow night around 7, I said. "And bring Rose. Pastor John is coming too, just for some cocoa and carols. It will be a small gathering." They accepted, thinking they were coming to a party. They did not know they were coming to be witnesses at a crime scene. Then, I walked into the kitchen where Tessa was drinking a kale smoothie. "Tessa, dear," I said, making my hands tremble slightly as I wiped the counter. "If we are going to sign those important papers tomorrow night, the ones about the house and the authority, maybe we should have a professional there to make sure I do it right. Maybe that man, Mr. Reed. He seems to know about these things." Tessa's eyes lit up. She thought I was surrendering completely. "That is a great idea, Marla," she said, beaming. "I will text Clayton right now. He will be happy to help." She texted him immediately. I turned away to hide my smile. The fox was coming to the henhouse, thinking the farmer was asleep. That night, as the snow began to fall outside, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text message from an unknown number. "You don't know who you are playing with. Back off." My heart hammered against my ribs. Had they found out about the trust? Had Clayton realized who I was meeting with? I sat in the dark, my breath catching in my throat. Then, 10 seconds later, a second message arrived from a different unknown number. "Stick to the plan. I will be there." Christmas Eve arrived with a flurry of snow and the hollow cheer of forced celebration. My living room was filled with people, the air heavy with the scent of pine needles and the tension I had carefully cultivated. Miriam was there, clutching a cup of hot cocoa near the fireplace. Rose, my neighbor, who had eyes like a hawk, sat on the sofa. Pastor John was admiring the tree. To them, it was a party. To me, it was a courtroom, and I was the judge waiting for the defendants to incriminate themselves. At 8 o'clock, Drew clinked a silver spoon against his wineglass. The room fell silent. He stood in the center of the rug, his arm draped possessively around Tessa's waist. "I want to make a toast," Drew announced, his smile bright and practiced. "To family, and to my mother, for finally understanding what is best for everyone. Starting tomorrow morning, Tessa is moving in officially. It is going to be a big change. Mom, and I know you are set in your ways, but you will adapt. You have to." The room went quiet. The guests shifted uncomfortably. That was not a toast. It was an eviction notice wrapped in a smile. Before the silence could stretch too long, Tessa stepped forward. She was holding the thick blue folder I had seen before. And to make sure everything goes smoothly, Tessa chirped, her voice too high. "We thought we would get the boring paperwork out of the way tonight. Since we are all here." As if on cue. The doorbell rang. Tessa rushed to answer it and returned with Clayton Reed. He was slick, wearing a suit that cost more than my car, shaking snow off his shoulders. He walked in like he owned the place. "Sorry to intrude on the festivities," Clayton said, flashing a shark-like grin. "Just here to witness a few signatures. Standard procedure for asset management. Drew pulled a chair to the center of the room and patted the seat. Sit down. Mum? Let's get this done so we can open presents. I sat. I let my shoulders slump. I put on my reading glasses, letting them slide down my nose slightly. I looked at the papers, my hands shaking with a tremor I summoned from pure will. I don't know. Drew. I stammered, looking up at him with wide, watery eyes. There are so many pages, I can't quite focus on the words. Just sign where the yellow stickers are. Marla, Tessa said, her voice sharpening. We explained this to you yesterday. Don't make a scene. But what is this part? I pointed to a paragraph at random. Drew sighed, a loud, exasperated sound that echoed in the quiet room. Jesus. Mum, it is just the medical proxy. Just sign it. Why do you always have to make everything difficult? Clayton Reed leaned in, tapping his pen on the table. Mrs. Whitaker. It is essentially a formality. It just activates the power of sale addendum so your son can handle the overhead expenses. The room froze. Rose, who was sitting 3 feet away, set her cup down. Power of sale. Marla. I thought you said this was just for medical decisions. Drew's head snapped toward Rose. His face flushed red. This is a private family matter. Drew snapped. Rose. Miriam, maybe you guys should head to the kitchen for some more cake. Give us a minute. It was a command, not a request. He was trying to clear the witnesses. Miriam looked at me, her eyes worried. She started to stand up. No, I said. My voice was not shaking anymore. I sat up straight, dropping the act of the frail old widow. I looked at Miriam, then at Rose. Sit down, I said clearly. Nobody leaves this room. You are guests in my house, and you will stay until I say the party is over. Drew stared at me, confused by the sudden change in my tone. Mom, what are you doing? You are embarrassing yourself. Am I? I asked. I reached under the table and pulled out a manila envelope I had taped there an hour ago. I placed it on the coffee table, right next to their stack of legal traps. I think it is only fair, I said, smoothing the envelope with my hand. If I sign your papers, you should sign mine. I also have some paperwork for the family. Drew laughed, a nervous, incredulous sound. What is this? Your will, Mom. We don't need to do that now. I looked at him. I looked at the son I had raised, the boy I had protected from the world. And I saw a stranger who looked at me and saw only a dollar sign. Drew? I said softly. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to force me to sign these papers in front of everyone? Think carefully. Drew puffed out his chest. He looked at Clayton, then at Tessa. He felt powerful. He felt he had already won. Absolutely, Drew said, his voice dripping with arrogance. I want everyone to see that you are doing this voluntarily. So go ahead. Sign. I picked up my pen, but I did not reach for his papers. I reached for the remote control hidden in my pocket. Good, I whispered. Because I want them to see it too. I pointed the remote control at the television mounted above the fireplace and pressed the red button. The screen flickered to life instantly. It was not a Christmas movie or a news broadcast. It was a live, high-definition feed of the very room we were standing in, captured from a wide angle by the camera I had hidden in the bookshelf 2 days ago. On the screen, every guest could clearly see the last 10 minutes Drew looming over me with a menacing posture. Clayton tapping the papers aggressively, and my own feigned fear. The audio was crisp, replaying Drew's demand for me to sign voluntarily. The room went deadly silent. Drew stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. "What is this?" Drew hissed, spinning around to face me. "Is this a joke? It is a record," I said, my voice steady and cold. "And in this state, it is admissible evidence of coercion." Before Drew could lung for the remote, Miriam stood up from the sofa. She reached into her oversized handbag and pulled out a crisp document with a government seal. "Actually, Drew, those papers you are trying to force your mother to sign are worthless," Miriam announced, her voice ringing with the authority of a woman who had managed city records for 40 years. I pulled the updated property abstract at 8 o'clock this morning. As of yesterday afternoon, the title to this house was transferred. It is no longer owned by Marla Whittaker as an individual. It is owned by the Whittaker Home Trust. Drew froze. "The what a trust?" Miriam continued, enjoying every syllable, "managed by an independent trustee. Even if Marla signed your power of attorney right now, it would grant you control over absolutely nothing. You cannot sell a house she does not technically hold the title to." The colour drained from Tessa's face. She looked at Clayton, panic rising in her eyes. At that exact moment, the back door opened. A gust of cold wind blew through the kitchen as Evan Blackwell walked in. He was holding a blue legal folder. He did not look like a guest. He looked like a prosecutor. He walked straight to the coffee table and tossed the folder down in front of Clayton Reed. "Mr. Reed," Evan said, his voice deceptively polite. "Would you like to explain to these good people why a subsidiary of North Pine Family Solutions filed a $50,000 mechanics lien against this property 3 days ago for structural work that was never performed?" The guests gasped. Rose covered her mouth with her hand. Clayton loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead despite the winter chill. "Now, look here. That was likely just a clerical error, an administrative mistake. We handle thousands of files." "A clerical error?" Evan repeated flatly. "That just happened to create a debt large enough to force a foreclosure sale. That is a felony. Mr. Reed." Tessa suddenly shrieked, shattering the tension. She pointed a trembling finger at me. You are doing this on purpose," she screamed, her face twisting into something ugly. "You are old and confused. You don't know what you are doing. Drew, call the doctor. We need that competency evaluation right now. She is clearly paranoid. She is unfit to manage anything." The guests murmured, looking between me and the screaming woman. I stood up slowly. I did not scream back. "Unfit?" I asked softly. "Was I unfit when you told me to move into the basement because the upstairs was too good for me? Was I unfit when Drew told me that if I didn't hand over the house, the only other option was a nursing home that smells like bleach? Was I unfit when you changed the locks on my own doors before you even moved in?" I looked around the room at my friends and neighbours. They told me I was a burden. I said to the silent crowd. They told me I was broken. But I think my memory is working just fine. Tessa opened her mouth to argue, but the sound of the front door opening stopped her. A man stepped into the entryway. He was tall, wearing a charcoal wool coat, with silver hair that caught the light of the chandelier. He carried himself with a quiet, dangerous dignity. He brushed the snow from his shoulders and looked across the room, his eyes locking onto mine. "Marla," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "You finally called me. It was Harrison Vale. I did not introduce him. I simply walked over and handed him a single sheet of paper from my envelope. Drew looked at the man, and for the first time, genuine terror replaced his arrogance. My son went pale, as if he had seen a ghost. "You," Drew stammered, backing away until he hit the edge of the sofa. "What are you doing here?" Harrison looked at Drew with eyes that were cold as ice. "I am here to witness a signature." "Drew," Harrison said. "Surely, you want to finish what you started. You wanted to force your mother to sign in front of a witness. Well, I am watching." You have no right," Drew whispered, his voice trembling. "My rights." Harrison stepped closer, his presence filling the room. "Oh, son. You will remember exactly what rights I have very soon." Harrison Vale was not just a ghost from a romance I had buried under 30 years of silence. He was the man who had helped map out the property lines of Maple Hollow before it became a town of subdivisions and strip malls. He was the co-founder of the Regional Land Trust, a man who knew every acre of soil in this county better than he knew his own children. He had left me decades ago, vanishing right when the grief of losing my parents had nearly drowned me, and I had never forgiven him for that silence. But tonight, he was not here to apologize. He was here to drop the hammer. "I have been tracking North Pine for 2 years," Harrison said, his voice filling the room, steady and undeniable. "They specialize in predatory acquisition. They find elderly owners sitting on land that is about to be rezoned, and they use their children to extract the deed before the market value spikes. When I saw the name Whitaker pop up on their target list last month, I tried to call you. Marla, you hung up." "I thought you were selling insurance," I said, my voice tight. "I was trying to sell you a lifeline," Harrison replied. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded email printout. He walked past Drew and held it directly in front of my son's face. "You think this was your idea?" "Drew?" Harrison asked, his tone almost pitying. "Look at the date." Drew squinted at the paper. This is from August. We didn't even get engaged until October." "Exactly," Harrison said. "Tessa contacted North Pine in August. She requested a valuation of Marla's estate 3 months before she accepted your proposal. She didn't say yes to you, son. She said yes to the commission she negotiated with Clayton Reed." The silence in the room was absolute. Drew turned slowly to look at Tessa. His face was a mask of betrayal. You planned this," Drew whispered. "You told me you loved the house because it had character. You told me we needed to help Mom." Tessa's face hardened. The mask of the sweet, helpful daughter-in-law cracked and fell away completely. She snatched the paper from Drew's hand and crumpled it. "Oh, grow up, Drew," Tessa snapped, her voice shrill. "Don't look at me like I am the villain. We need the money. You are drowning in credit card debt, and your mother is sitting on a gold mine she is too stupid to use. I was securing our future. Someone had to be the adult here because you are too weak to do what is necessary." "You used me," Drew said, his voice breaking. "I gave you a spine," Tessa spat back. "But clearly, it didn't stick. Look at you, shaking because your mommy is mad." The guests were staring, horrified. This was not a family dispute. It was a dissection. I cleared my throat. It was a soft sound, but it cut through their shouting match like a blade. "I think it is time for you to see the papers I prepared for you," I said calmly. I picked up the manila envelope I had placed on the table earlier. I pulled out 2 documents, stiff and formal on heavy bond paper. "These are not Christmas cards," I said, sliding them across the table toward Drew and Tessa. "These are notices against trespass. They inform you that as of this moment, you are no longer welcome on the property of the Whitaker Home Trust. Any further communication regarding my assets must go through my attorney, Mr. Blackwell. If you remain on the premises past midnight, or if you attempt to enter again without invitation, I will press civil charges for harassment and trespassing." Drew looked down at the paper, his hands trembling violently. "Mom, you can't kick us out. It is Christmas. You tried to evict me from my own life. Drew," I said. "I am just returning the favor." Evan Blackwell stepped forward then, delivering the final blow. "And just so you understand what you lost," Evan said, adjusting his glasses. "The house was never the target. North Pine didn't care about the cottage. They wanted the 2 acres of marshland by the lake. The county council approved a new commercial zoning plan for that sector yesterday. That useless land is now worth 4 times the value of the house. Marla is not just a homeowner. She is a primary stakeholder in the new development district." A gasp went through the room. Rose whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Oh my God. He tried to rob his mother blind and missed the jackpot." Drew looked from Evan to me, the realization crashing down on him. He had sold his soul for pennies, and he hadn't even gotten the pennies. His reputation in this town was dead. Harrison looked at me, a faint, grim smile playing on his lips. "You don't just need to protect your assets, Marla," Harrison said quietly. "You need to teach them a lesson that will burn for the rest of their lives." I looked at my son, who was now weeping silently into his hands, and at Tessa, who was glaring at the wall like a trapped animal. "I am doing exactly that," I said. "Class is in session." Clayton Reed was a rat who sensed the ship was sinking before the water even touched his ankles. He buttoned his expensive suit jacket, forcing a tight, professional smile that looked more like a grimace. "Well, this seems to be a significant miscommunication regarding the family assets," Clayton said, edging toward the door. "I think it is best if I let you resolve this internally. I will withdraw the preliminary filings in the morning." "You are not going anywhere. Mr. Reed," Evan Blackwell said, his voice cutting through the room like a gavel. "I have already contacted the county district inspector. He is expecting a full report on your filing practices by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. If you leave now, I will add flight risk to the complaint." Clayton froze, his hand hovering over the doorknob. Seeing her legal shield crumble, Tessa switched tactics instantly. She let out a choked sob, her hands flying to her face. Tears that looked suspiciously practiced began to stream down her cheeks. "Oh, my God," Tessa wailed, turning toward the guests. "Do you see what she is doing? She is vicious. She is just a jealous, bitter old woman who cannot stand to see her son happy. She made all this up because she hates that Drew loves me more than her. She wants to destroy us." Her performance was convincing. I saw Mrs. Gable and a few others shift uncomfortably, looking at me with sudden doubt. Was I just a possessive mother taking things too far? I did not raise my voice. I did not scream. I simply reached into my bag and pulled out my leather-bound ledger. "Jealousy?" I asked, opening the book to the bookmarked pages. "Let's look at the math." "Tessa." I held the book up. June 12th. I read aloud. "Drew asked for $800 for car repairs because he was broke. I paid it. July 4th. Drew asked for rent money because he was between checks. I paid it. Here are the text messages from last month where he begged me to cover his credit card minimum. I held up my phone, scrolling through the desperate messages. Then I pointed at Drew, who was wearing a watch that cost more than my first car. He posts photos of expensive dinners and trips on Instagram. I said to the room, "But his mother pays his insurance. Does that look like I am ruining his happiness? Or does it look like I am subsidizing a lie?" The sympathy in the room evaporated. Miriam then stepped forward with the final nail for the coffin. She held up a photocopy of the urgent abstract request. "Tessa didn't file the official request to investigate the title," Miriam said, her voice sharp. "And neither did Clayton. The signature at the bottom of the request form belongs to Drew Whitaker." The air left the room. Drew had not just been a passive participant. He had actively initiated the hunt for my assets. Drew turned to Tessa, his face pale. You said you handled the paperwork. You told me to just sign the blank forms because you knew the legal jargon. You made me sign the request against my own mother." Tessa stopped crying instantly. Her face went cold and hard, stripped of all pretense. "Oh, stop whining." "Drew," she snapped, "you promised to be a husband. A husband provides a house. If you were man enough to afford one, we wouldn't be here. Don't look at me like a victim. You wanted the money just as much as I did." Drew recoiled as if she had slapped him. He realized in that second that he was not a partner. He was just a tool she had used to pry open my safe. Then Harrison Vale spoke, his voice low but thundering with authority. "That signature looks familiar." "Drew," Harrison said, stepping closer to my son. "Do you remember the college scholarship you received 12 years ago? The one from the Maple Hollow Community Fund that paid for your business degree?" Drew nodded, confused and terrified. I remember. I was the chairman of the board who approved that check." Harrison said, "I signed off on your future because I respected your mother. I helped you start your life, and you used that education to try and steal the roof over her head." The shame on Drew's face was absolute. He looked like he wanted to vanish into the floorboards. Somewhere in the back of the room, a younger guest, one of Tessa's friends, had instinctively pulled out a phone and started live streaming the drama. Rose immediately pointed at him. "Turn that off," she barked. "This is a family tragedy, not a reality show." The phone went down, but the damage was done. The court of public opinion was already in session. The room felt suffocating. A tribunal of neighbors and friends judging the son who had betrayed the woman who gave him life. I walked over to the table and placed a single sheet of paper in front of Drew. "You have two choices," I said, my voice steady. "Option 1. You sign this document. It is a formal confession of intent to defraud and a complete withdrawal of all claims filed by North Pine. You will also apologize to everyone in this room for wasting their Christmas Eve. Option 2. I hand this entire file to Evan, and we drive to the police station to file criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud." Drew looked at the paper, then at me. For the first time all night, he really looked at me. He didn't see the checkbook. He saw his mother. "Mom." His voice trembled, barely a whisper. "When? When did you prepare all this? How long have you known I looked him dead in the eye?" "I started the moment you called me," I said, and told me that I just needed to understand. Drew reached for the pen, his hand shaking so violently that he nearly knocked over the inkwell. He was desperate to sign the settlement, desperate to escape the suffocating gaze of the room and the camera lens that was still recording his every twitch. But before the tip of the pen could touch the paper, Evan Blackwell slid a second document on top of the first. "Not so fast, Drew," Evan said, his voice devoid of sympathy. "The settlement is just the start. This is a sworn statement admitting that you knowingly participated in the filing of a fraudulent lien against the property. Without this, the settlement is just paper. If you want to walk out of here without a police escort, you sign this too." Drew looked up, his face grey. This admits to a crime. If I sign this, my career is over." "Your career ended when you decided to defraud your mother," I said, stepping forward. "You think I want to punish you. Drew, you think this is revenge. No. I want you to look at yourself. Read it. Read exactly what you did to me. Out loud." "Mom, please," Drew begged, tears streaming down his face. "Read it," I commanded. Drew lowered his head. His voice cracked as he began to read the legal description of his betrayal. "I, Drew Whitaker, did knowingly conspire to misrepresent the financial status of the property in order to coerce a sale." The words hung in the air like smoke. When he finished, the room was silent enough to hear the snow hitting the windows. Evan then turned his attention to Tessa, who was edging away from Drew as if he were contagious. He held up a single printed email. "And for you, Ms. Tessa," Evan said. "We have the email thread between you and Clayton Reed dated September 10th. Subject line commission split. You agreed to take 50% of the broker's fee if you could convince Marla to sell before January 1st. Tessa's face twisted. She turned on Drew, shoving him hard in the chest. "You idiot!" she screamed. "You said you could handle her. You said she was soft. This is your fault. I told you to push harder." "Save it," I said, pointing at the television screen where the replay showed Tessa directing the entire scheme. "The camera doesn't lie, Tessa. You weren't a bystander. You were the architect." Harrison Vale stepped forward then. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a regret that had aged 30 years. "I ran away once." "Marla?" Harrison said softly. "I left because I was a coward who didn't know how to handle your grief or mine. I didn't come here tonight to save you. You didn't need saving. I came to be the witness I should have been decades ago. But the final call is yours." I nodded to him. Acknowledgement, forgiveness. Maybe later. But for now, solidarity was enough. I walked to the hallway drawer and pulled out the last item I had prepared. It was a small wooden sign I had painted myself in the garage 3 nights ago. I walked to the front door, opened it to the biting winter wind, and hung the sign on the outer hook. It read, "This home is not for sale, and neither is my dignity." I slammed the door shut and turned back to my son. "Sign it, Drew," I said, "and then get out." Defeated. Drew signed the admission. He signed the withdrawal of claims. He signed away his access to my life. Evan collected the papers and locked them in his briefcase. "The trust is locked." Evan confirmed. "If they ever try to file a document on this property again, it triggers an immediate restraining order and a civil suit." Drew stood up. He looked small. He looked like the little boy who used to scrape his knees, but I could no longer offer him a bandage. "You are kicking me out," Drew whispered. "On Christmas." "I didn't kick you out, Drew," I said, my voice steady and calm. "You walked out of this family the moment you decided I was just an obstacle to your bank account. You evicted yourself. Drew began to sob, a harsh, ugly sound. He looked at me, waiting for me to crack, waiting for the mother who forgave everything to step forward and hug him. But I stood my ground. I stood straight. Wait, I said. I reached into the box by the tree and pulled out a small, dusty object. It was a felt Christmas stocking, glued together with glitter and macaroni, made by a 6-year-old boy. I handed it to him. Inside, I had placed a note. "Take this," I said. Drew opened the note with trembling fingers. He read it, and his knees buckled. He sank into the chair, burying his face in the old felt. The note read, "I still love you, but from today, I love me first." Tessa had already fled out the back door. Drew stood up, clutching the stocking to his chest, and walked out into the snow without looking back. I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. The click was the loudest sound in the world. I turned back to the living room. The Christmas tree was twinkling. The fire was warm. The house was quiet. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that finally felt like my own. "Well," I said to Evan, Miriam, and Harrison, "this Christmas, I didn't lose my home. I took myself back. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and let me know your city or country. It is amazing to see how far our voices can travel. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and give us a hype to help this video reach more people who might need to hear it.